Greetings, this is Rosalind Parks with National Network View. Tonight we will be speaking with Vivian Muhammad about the recent UN declaration condemning Egypt. On tonight's show, Vivian Muhammad will talk about starting your greenhouse, and later we will have a conversation with Taji Aqib. 2 years ago, we lost a giant, a leader in the arts and culture community. Ermias Ashgadam, better known as Nipsey Hussle, also always expressed his love for his people and will always be honored in our community.
Brothers and sisters, on behalf of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and this grateful nation of Islam, we are here to dedicate this time and moment to one of our great princes, a king, a general. We first want to pay homage to his beautiful queen, Sister Lauren London, and their beautiful son. And we want their family to know that the nation of Islam we embrace, his family and extended family. We are a part of his hood.
Yesterday, in the Derek Chauvin murder trial, an off-duty firefighter, Genevieve Clara Hansen, testified that she attempted to help George Floyd, but was prevented from doing so by police.
Are you really a firefighter?
Yes, I am from Minneapolis.
Okay, then get on the sidewalk.
Show me his clothes.
Firefighter Genevieve Hansen broke down as she testified that the officers would not let her intervene and help George Floyd.
Were you frustrated?
Yes, I was desperate to help, and I wasn't getting what I needed to do.
Also played in court her 911 call, calling Minneapolis police on their own officers.
I literally watched police officers not take a pulse and not do anything to save a man.
On Monday, the CDC director spoke about the rising numbers of COVID cases and stated that she was scared.
It was one of those times when I have to share the truth and I have to hope and trust you will listen. I'm going to pause here. I'm going to lose the script, and I'm going to reflect on the recurring feeling I have of impending doom. We have so much to look forward to, so much promise and potential of where we are, and so much reason for hope. But right now, I'm scared.
The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan stated on July 4, 2020, that America would not conquer this virus. This week, National Tennessee experienced an enormous amount of rain in a short period of time. Take a look at this clip.
The same system that brought tornadoes to the south, dumping heavy rain here in Middle Tennessee. Just take a look at this road, still completely underwater, creeks and rivers overflowing. More than 100 people had to be rescued.
Overnight, powerful winds taking out trees and power lines across the Northeast. This motel evacuated in New Jersey after suffering significant damage. The storm traveling up the East Coast after wreaking havoc in Tennessee. Record rainfall tormenting parts of the state. Nashville under a flash flood emergency. Cars completely submerged. At least 4 killed. More than 130 people rescued from the floodwaters. This morning, many roads now impassable, buckling from the storm.
Nashville received more than 7 inches of rain over the past 48 hours. That is the second highest 2-day rainfall total in our history.
We have been warned to watch the weather and the calamities that are to come. The minister recently spoke about the influence that Black celebrities have on us to take the vaccine.
When I tell you don't take the vaccine, television comes on. Radio comes on. My wonderful artists and sports figures come on, showing us their courage to take the vaccine. Some of you are being used and don't know it. Your fame, your celebrity, your influence, your money. Now you're being bought and paid for the destruction of your people. This is another form of the great betrayal.
On yesterday's show, Dr. Aqib discussed the effects of diabetes and the higher risk of COVID virus complications among Blacks. You give us some information as some of the symptoms that one might experience.
Yes, excellent question. So typically, how people usually will present and usually get diagnosed with diabetes is a combination of a few things, mostly being fatigued, excessive urination, typically at night. Sometimes they have problems with like swallowing and just other things that occur when a person is dehydrated. Of course, sugar draws water in the body like a sponge does water. And so when your sugar is high, it's being pulled out of the tissues, urinate a lot of water into the toilet. And so the body winds up being dehydrated and not able to function as it should. Of course, the body is 75% water. So it just makes sense that if you drain water out of the body and the body is no longer in that percentage that it should be, then things start to go south.
Later in yesterday's broadcast, Dr. Aqib was joined by Ilya Rashad and discussed food shortages. What food items and non-perishable goods should people stock up on to sustain themselves and their family during these perilous times?
Yes, ma'am. So I would say, the first thing that I would suggest would be navy beans because of the nutritional value that they have and the capacity for storage. You can store them for periods of time without them spoiling. Other things that we could also consider would be, of course, canned foods, but there's a period of time that those would no longer be good. Dried fruits, seeds, sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, things of that nature. And in a time like we're living in, when you are considering what you are storing, the health and the quality of that food needs to be taken in consideration as well, because we don't want to be in a situation like this where food is short. And then when you do put food in your body, you're putting food that is null and void of nutrients. And so that's one of the things I think we should really consider. Navy beans, other things that we can use and that we can store that will give us the quality nutrition that we need. So if there are sparing meals, you're still getting the type of nutrition that can serve you well.
Ilya Rashad updated us on UFOs and the government's plan to release reports. The U.S. has secret evidence of UFOs breaking the sound barrier without a sonic boom and performing moves humans don't have the technology for. Is it true that humans don't have this technology?
Not the type of humans that are a part of this world. Mm-hmm. However, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, as some may or may not know, was the one who introduced this reality of what people call UFOs to the modern world. This he was directly shown by his teacher, who he claims to have been taught by God in person, in the person of Master Fard Muhammad. Interesting that most of the scholars and critics leave this very important part out when they're discussing this topic, but it was Master Fard Muhammad who is responsible for these wheel-shaped crafts and the gigantic, what we call the mother wheel, the gigantic wheel-shaped craft that he literally showed physically to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in the early 30s and gave him the most intricate and intimate details concerning these crafts, those who pilot and control them, what they're capable of, and their overall purpose on this earth or in the world. And that purpose is to show that there is a new, more superior power that is on scene, and that is the power of God, whose presence is in the real world.
Right. On Monday, we focused on increased gun violence in the U.S. and the recent incidents of mass shootings.
So, Dr. Clark, what do you think is causing these continuing mass shootings to take place in America?
This is the question that all the Americans are asking, folks who live outside of the United States. Everyone's wanting to know why is that we having these mass killings, these mass shootings. But the mass shootings, they're more frequent than one would imagine. You just now gave the number of how many mass shootings have taken place already this year, which is actually 66 more mass shootings than we had at this time last year, year 2020. What stands is that a mass shooting can be defined as 4 or more people being injured or fatalities in an incident, excluding the shooter, him or herself. So what explains this? It can go down into a number of issues. It can be culture. It can be guns availability. All of these, etc. I'm a political scientist by training, but the reality again is such that folks look to the social sciences and say what is the problem, and those of you who come out of your arena, the faith-based arena, but say, wait a minute, it's a matter of loss. They've lost their faith. And so it's a multitude more than just one response.
We also covered the America's Federal Communication Commission complaints filed after Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion's performance at the Grammys.
Has the American public become this proverbial swine because of the content that it is constantly fed?
Absolutely. You know, we are what we eat, and if physically we're eating trash, then we're going to produce obesity. We're going to produce disease and a death-like condition. And so, you know, man is what his thoughts are and what his heart is. And so spiritually speaking, our artists have a duty and a responsibility. And now what they're doing is feeding filth to popular culture. And so what's going to be produced? We're talking about mass shootings earlier, but there's a consequence of this type of behavior, not just financially, but we're talking about the degradation and the devaluing of the social fabric. We're talking about single parent homes. We're talking about, improper male-female relationships, destruction of the whole family unit, destroying of the community, of a nation. I mean, this has major implications. And when the woman doesn't understand her value as a woman, and that, she is beautiful in the sight of God, and the man does not understand the value of that woman enough to protect her from herself, then what we see is a civilization that has fallen like Babylon, like Rome, like Sodom and Gomorrah. And the wrath of God, he's looking upon this. But if we understood and we adhere to see, spiritually speaking, because we're not just talking about physical or money or material, but it has a whole big implication. So we got to pay attention to that.
On Friday, we spoke with Dr. Abdul Halim about the recent meeting between America and China and their relationship.
China in and of itself has its own domestic and international policy, and so does America. And they may clash, and its two truths may not be mutually exclusive. So as America accuses China of abusing human rights and mistreating the Muslim population there, and then the Chinese turn around and accuse them of mistreating Black people and probably Native Americans and diminishing its own democracy, as we've seen in the Georgia laws and the 43 states that are passing these voter suppression laws. These are two truths, but they're not mutually exclusive. So they're both guilty, and they both should be warned from the voice of God in our midst, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, the Messiah, that they're both in trouble and they need to humble themselves lest they face the calamities that God has in store for them.
Let's pause for announcements from our sponsors. When we return, NNV Weekly contributor Brian E. Muhammad discusses the recent UN declaration concerning Egypt. We'll be right back.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Your support helps us to highlight solutions for a brighter tomorrow. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.
This is Sister Sajida Muhammad, we are proud to announce that the Sajda House commemorative Elijah coins are finally here. This priceless heirloom, made from recycled copper from the messenger's home, is now available at sajdahouse.com.
The hashtag Bank Black social media campaign made strides not only in revolutionizing how we bank, but also how we think. The movement inspired thousands of African Americans across the country to transfer or deposit millions of dollars into Black-owned banks. These are banks that will invest in urban communities, employ African Americans, support Black businesses, and inspire Black home ownership. This is a very proud moment for our culture as we are taking small, but significant, steps towards building Black power through Black wealth.
Please share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel at National Network View. I am Anissa Muhammad with NNVnews.com.
The U.S. and 31 UN member states signed a joint declaration condemning Egypt and expressing deep concern for widespread human rights violations.
The United States joined 30 other Western and mostly European countries that have signed a joint statement calling on Egypt to end the prosecution of activists, journalists, and perceived political opponents and release them unconditionally. Egypt's foreign ministry expressed, quote, great surprise and disapproval in reaction to the statement, which it said contained inaccurate information without proof. The United States, which has observer status at the UN Human Rights Council, called on Cairo to lift curbs on freedoms of expression and assembly. Egypt is a close ally of the United States, but the Biden administration has vowed to speak out about human rights violations. President Abdul Fattah al-Sisi, who ousted the Muslim Brotherhood from power in 2013, has overseen an extensive crackdown on political dissent that has steadily tightened in recent years. Sisi has said there are no political prisoners in Egypt and that stability and security are paramount.
Joining us to discuss is Brian E. Muhammad. Greetings.
Greetings. Thank you.
Thank you. A joint UN declaration signed by the U.S. and other members highlighted Egypt's restrictions on freedom of expression and the right to peacefully assemble for society and political opposition. What has prompted this action by the UN?
Well, Rosalind, it was actually pressure from human rights groups and organizations from around the world who wanted to make sure that the problem of Egypt was placed on the Human Rights Council radar screen. Egypt is a member state along with these other states that you mentioned, the 31 countries that signed a letter to condemn Egypt for its human rights abuse problem. And so it took outside groups, independent groups from around the world to put pressure on the Human Rights Commission to take this up recently at their 46th session that just ended, in fact, a week ago. And so really it was pressure from the rights organizations from around the world that brought this on.
Okay. Now, the last joint declaration on the human rights situation in Egypt at the Human Rights Council was co-signed by 26 countries in March of 2014. Why has the human rights situation in Egypt deteriorated since then?
Well, first, Egypt has always had a problem. Egypt for 30 years, since 1979, up until 2011 had a problem of human rights under the leadership and dictatorship of Hosni Mubarak, who was a staunch friend to the United States of America. In fact, those 30 years, and it still continues to this day, even with this present problem, that Egypt is the second largest recipient of U.S. foreign aid, particularly military aid. This first being Israel, Egypt is number 2. So it has deteriorated because it never changed. When they had the Arab Spring back in 2011, they talked about a new day. And when they overthrew Hosni Mubarak in 2011, there was a democratically elected government run by the Muslim Brotherhood. It was a man by the name of Mohammed Morsi that came to power, and it was Egypt's first and only democratically elected government. And then the present government that's in power now overthrew that government in 2012 or 2013. But it wasn't that human rights got worse, it just remained the same. It was a different face on a new day, or a new day but a different face, or old day and a new face. Gotcha. So it never changed. It never changed.
Will this latest UN declaration change the situation in Egypt?
No, it is unlikely to change the situation because the UN, unfortunately, the Human Rights Council, which is a body of the United Nations, is a part and parcel of the United Nations itself. It makes declarations, but it doesn't have teeth to enforce declarations. So even though 31 nations, and I just want to say this about those 31 nations, it was like the kettle calling the pot metal. It's the same thing. All of these countries, including the United States, have their own human rights issues. So they cannot hypocritically now call out one of their members for the same thing that they are guilty of. So it won't change, because when they placed this mandate on Egypt to deal with your problem, there was nothing tied to it like a threat of sanctions. There was nothing tied to it. The United States, let's just look at this very hypocritically. The United States, 1 month before it signed this declaration with these 30 other nations, gave aid of approved aid of 1.9 or something $billion. Again, this is mostly military aid. Okay. So you're going to say the same military government that is doing all of these atrocities at home in Egypt, but you are funding that through the aid that you give it, and you didn't threaten them when you signed that letter saying we're going to take this aid back. So it's all, ceremony.
Gotcha. Why has Egypt's human rights situation deteriorated under President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi's rule? What is it about his rule that makes this deterioration unique?
Well, al-Sisi, wow. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and a longtime friend of the Nation of Islam, the late Ali Baghdadi, who was the Middle East advisor to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he refers to al-Sisi as Abdel Fattah the Sisi, because this man is really the Sisi of America. This man he's a military man. He was the top military leader under Hosni Mubarak. He came to power by overthrowing the democratically elected government that came after the overthrow after the ousting of Mubarak by the so-called Arab Spring. But he was a liar because he made the people believe that him and the military will bring a new day of justice to the Egyptian people. But he did not. He continued the legacy that he was always a part of. So Al-Sisi, again, he's just a new face to an old problem, a problem that never went away under the Arab Spring, a problem that will remain there as long as Al-Sisi is in power and the military is in power. See, this is the problem. The military is the problem in Egypt. So we can blame him for the current situation because rights organizations do say that under Al-Sisi, things have gotten progressively worse when it comes to human rights abuses. But again, when you look at it in the spectrum of history, again, it's the same game, but a different player.
The Egyptian security forces have been accused of engaging in systematic abuses. What abuses have the Egyptian government and security forces actually been accused of?
Well, wow, many things. You know, forced disappearances, jailing people, holding people, what they call incommunicado, where they hold somebody, but they don't have access to lawyers, their family. In fact, nobody knows where these people are being held. You know, you have people who have been jailed for their outspokenness, and they have been jailed and not given trials for years. You know, I mean, just sitting there in jail, you know. And so then the other thing is the charges. The Egyptian government, they have gotten into a habit, which many authoritarian governments do. They say that they declare a state of emergency, you know. And now, because we have this problem of terrorism in the world, they have used that to falsely charge. They use the terrorism charge and terrorism laws in their country as false pretext to arrest legitimate protesters. So if I speak out, they just charge me with being a member of a terrorist group and plotting terrorism and place me in jail under these unjust circumstances.
Gotcha. Okay. Is the Egyptian government attempting to annihilate human rights organizations and eradicate the human rights movement in the country?
That's what they're being charged with by human rights advocates and change agents. I would say that yes, they have an interest if they want to continue the tyranny, which again, going back to Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, he said this is the day of the end of tyrants and tyranny. But if they want to continue, then they have to eradicate anything that speaks or raises its head against tyranny. And so I would say, yes, there is an agenda to eradicate this, you know, because they do not want the accountability of the people. And, you know, and again, we can say the UN and these different international bodies, but these different international bodies are made up of other nations who are not that different from Egypt. Maybe they do their tyranny in a different way, but it's the same thing. How can I trust the fox to give justice to, you know, to the hen? You know, no, the fox gonna do what a fox do. You see what I'm saying? Right. A lion giving justice to some other animal out there that does what it does. It's not gonna happen.
That's right. Brother Brian, thank you for your insight on this subject.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's pause for announcements from our sponsors. When we come back, Vivian Muhammad, another NNB contributor, will join us to talk about greenhouses. We'll be right back.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. go to nnvnews.com/donate.
Thank you for tuning in to NNV News. Please share your thoughts with us in the comments section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, National Network View. This is Clifton Muhammad with nnvnews.com.
Worldwide, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Download the Final Call Radio app and take us everywhere. On your phone, on your computer, on your tablet, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also log on to finalcall.com and click the Listen Live button or finalcallradio.com. Final Call Radio, the official voice of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam.
This is Sister Sajda Muhammad. We are proud to announce that the Sajda House commemorative Elijah coins are finally here. As we renovate and restore the former home of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, we have recycled the old copper gutters and downspouts and created a 1 ounce 39mm coin made of 100% pure copper. Each coin is professionally graded and has its own barcode and registration number. This priceless heirloom, made from recycled copper from the messenger's home, is now available at sajdahouse.com.
When selling at the market, a growing number of farmers rely on a variety of organic starter plants and seeds from the Muhammad Farm Staple Goods Program.
What we sell at our market, well, we sell, as I mentioned, our organic starter plants. We sell a variety of tomatoes. We sell the homestead tomatoes from the seeds we get through the Staple Goods Program. We rely heavily on the Staple Goods Program seeds for a lot of what we grow. Our peppers come from them, our squash, our peas, and just a wide variety of things. I can't even think of them all right now, but we also grow leeks, potatoes, onions, green beans, pumpkins, lettuce, pretty much all you see and more. What you see in the corner, I think it's your left corner at the top, are how we have taken staple goods and packaged them and repackaged them and sell them in 1 pound bags.
Joining us to talk about greenhouses is Vivian Muhammad. Greetings, Sister Vivian.
Assalamu
alaikum. What are starter plants and what is the process for growing them?
Starter plants, also known as seedlings, are plants that you can buy at any kind of garden center. And those plants are then transplanted into a garden versus, for instance, direct sow or direct seeding, which means you take the actual seed and plant it directly into the soil. Because we live in Indiana in zone 6, because the whole United States is put up in zones, and in our particular zone and in other zones north of us and a few south of us, when we grow and what we can grow is very dependent on what month it is. And because we can't really get started until middle of May, as far as putting things like tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, watermelon, cantaloupe, all those in the garden, if we put them in too early, they will run the risk of being frosted. We have very late, Indianapolis, Indiana is notorious for late winter weather. And so all those plants would die in any type of weather below 32 degrees. Today it's 26 degrees. So you kind of get the idea. So starter plants lets us get a head start on the season, which is why they call them starter plants, because we start them indoors. and then transplant them.
Now, for someone new to planting, gardening, and farming, what tips do you have that you can offer for someone who wants to find out about what zone they're in their area?
Now, the zones you can easily Google, and what planting zone do I live in? And or you can say, wherever you live in Indianapolis, what planting zone is Indianapolis? And you'll get a whole map. There are pictures that will show you what zone you're in. And your seed packets will normally have on the reverse side a picture of all the zones, and the seed packets will help guide you and tell you on the back side, hey, if you're in zone such and so, you want to do it this way. For tomatoes and peppers and things like that, it's always recommended to start those indoors and then transplant them. You get a 4 to 8 week jump on the season because they'll be that old by the time you put them in the ground. And so you can start getting a harvest a little earlier.
Okay. If someone can't start their own plants, what are the options and what should they think about when choosing plants?
The first thing you want to think about is it organic, and is it heirloom? Some of your building centers will have, and garden centers will have organic. Some won't even offer them. So that's the first thing if you're going to buy starter plants. And that's the main thing to consider is whether or not they're organic or heirloom or both. Both is preferable, organic, heirloom. And then in either case, what zone do I live in so that when I transplant them, they won't die?
Right. Now, what exactly is the difference between organic and heirloom?
So heirloom means they've been around for a long, long time, as the name implies. You know, this is a seed that where they can trace it back several generations, and so there's an assumption that it's not GMO because GMO is a rather new, last 30-year phenomenon. So if it's heirloom, it's past that. So we can safely say, okay, it's heirloom. It's not GMO. And organic means that kind of, if it's organic, it's supposed to mean, it's supposed to mean that it's been derived from a plant that is not genetically modified, where the DNA of that plant has not been altered, and it consequently is not hasn't been sprayed with or doesn't come from a plant that has been sprayed with different chemicals, but more importantly, that the genetic makeup of the seed itself is not has not been tampered with.
All right. So let's say I'm new to gardening. I've gotten my heirloom and organic seeds, and I've gotten my containers, and I'm looking on the internet and I'm Googling, and I stumble upon container gardening. What is that and how does it work?
Container gardening is really a great option. If you, those are our container gardens in that picture there, or container plants. So the before and after just showed you a bucket basically with soil. At the bottom, you can put anything from a little sand, rocks, but those tend to make it a little heavy. You can also use compostable materials like shredded cardboard and things like that. That's just to help it drain properly. And then you would put on top of that your organic soil. So in essence, container gardening, as the name implies, means that I am growing my plant in a container versus growing it in ground or growing it in a raised bed. So it is a wonderful, ideal way to grow for if you have like abandoned parking lots where the cost, it's cost prohibitive to try to tear up the whole concrete parking lot and put in new organic soil. But what you can do is have these containers. Now, containers don't have to be made of any particular material. They can be food grade 5-gallon buckets, wherein you drill holes in the base of it, so for drainage. And then again, add a little sand, maybe less than an inch, half-inch worth of sand that helps hold water, but it also helps to slow down the drainage process. And then the soil, the organic soil, and then your plant. One of the good things about container gardening is that if you live in an apartment building, but you have a nice patio that gets lots of sun, guess what? That's a perfect place to put a container for tomatoes, peppers, so you can go right out on your patio and get those items. So it's just really another way to grow, especially for urban growers and in urban settings. Urban gardens are the big thing now because, well, the world is changing and we really do need more people on a local level to grow. Right. So containers offer an option for those who may not have a quarter acre or an acre or even a backyard.
Mm-hmm. Now, speaking of urban gardens, Elephant Gardens, which is an urban garden and greenhouse, is growing a variety of organic vegetables and fruits. What are some of your most popular varieties of plants grown in the greenhouse?
Well, this year, I would say that some of our most popular varieties would be our okra is always popular, tomatoes. We grow 2 cultivars of tomatoes, the homestead tomatoes that I mentioned in the piece you showed earlier that are seeds we get through the Staple Goods program. We also grow their okra. So the okra I grow is also derived from seeds from the Staple Goods program. Squash and zucchini are always popular ones. Watermelon are popular too. These are just a variety of the starter plants that we grow, but also our flowers. We grow marigolds, echinacea, and chamomile for medicinal purposes and for teas, but a lot of people like them because they're just so beautiful. And we have lots of herbs that we also seem to be popular this year. We offer thyme and basil and oregano, etc. And those herbs seem to be really popular, sage, this year.
How much square footage of land is necessary for growing plants in a greenhouse lab?
Square footage of land. Well, the greenhouse you just showed in that picture, that's a huge greenhouse. That's what we would call a mega greenhouse, a commercial greenhouse. And it looked like the crop was spinach. You don't have to have that much square footage. We transformed our former, it was my dad's dog run into a greenhouse. And it's about a 12 by 36 or longer feet greenhouse. And you saw from the picture, we can get a lot in there, right? Presently, that picture was just taken. We have about about 1,000 plants in there now and more to come. So yeah, so you see
that is a lot.
Yeah, those are our tomatoes. Those have been transplanted recently from their original cells, small cells, 72 cells into those pots.
Okay. So let's say I have a backyard, and as you have recently used an old dog run, what equipment is required for a successful greenhouse?
Well, the first equipment is a good contractor. It's not an equipment, but you definitely need that. Someone that really knows what they're doing so that you don't get grief. I happen to have a really good one that worked on ours. But you're going to need wood. You're going to need the type of, there's a very specific greenhouse plastic. This is not the flimsy plastic that you'll see some temporary greenhouses made out of or hoop houses. This is a very hard, almost, I don't even know how to describe it, but it reflects, it absorbs light. It's just really great. It insulates. For instance, it was 48 degrees here today at the warmest. It's cooled off since then, but the greenhouse was at 90 degrees. Oh, okay. So it can get really warm in there if you have it in the right position. The other thing is to make sure it is in the right position. where you're going to want to know where your north face is, because it's not going to get any sun that way, but the eastern and western and southern faces of the greenhouse. So you're going to want to consider the positioning of the greenhouse and the sun when you start to build it.
Well, thank you, Sister Vivian, for joining us today and letting us know how to start a container garden and about greenhouses.
Yes, ma'am. You're very welcome. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. Let us pause for announcements from our sponsors. When we come back, we will be joined by musical artist and poet Taji Aqib. We'll be right back.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Your support helps us to highlight solutions for a brighter tomorrow. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.
Greetings from National Network View. This week's Final Call cover story headline reads, Food Shortages, COVID-19, and Fears of a Major Crisis. The coronavirus pandemic is disrupting food supply chains and hurting multiple food industries. People are worrying that the pestilence could impact the ability for Americans to eat. This FCN volume number 26 edition features the middle page article by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. This message is entitled, The Key to Success is to Do for Self. To read more, subscribe to finalcalldigital.com and tune in to the all-new Final Call Radio. This is the nnvnews.com Final Call cover report.
The Sun Rises in the East project is rebooting hip-hop culture. Its architect, Taji Aqib, is bringing life back into hip-hop culture through music and visual art.
Where the Sun Rises, a hip-hop song that draws upon a parallel between mankind's beginnings in the East, Africa, and the East Coast hip-hop scene in the U.S., in particular its roots in New York, hip-hop's mecca. With this project, we try and take it back to when she was pure and resurrected, to the days it was less about financial gain and more about the love, creativity, being original skills, having substance, and rising above, to the days you was proud to spit your favorite verse, not worried about who'd hear it, to the days it was about random ciphers and just good competitive spirit, man. Yeah, that was hip-hop. And I'm hip-hop artist Taji Aqib, the architect.
He's a writer, speaker, MC, producer, artist, and revolutionary all-in-one. His latest venture, Project Sunrises, is just one way he's bringing his audience back to hip-hop's humble beginnings. Welcome, Taji.
What's up? Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. All right. Can you tell us how the concept for Project Sunrises came about?
It was actually a conversation I had with an artist who I was collaborating with a lot back then. We were trying to think of a way to get people involved with something that was constructive in the hip hop community. We just came up with that idea. It was just a thought at the time. And I said, you know what, maybe I could get people to donate to it using the crowdfunder. And, I did. I raised a decent amount of money. I actually had to come out my pocket a little bit on my own to actually get it done. But once I got the money to do the project, I figured I had to follow through with it. So it wasn't easy, but once I set my mind on something, especially something that's constructive like that, I figured I have to get it done.
Now, on Project Sunrise, you filmed in Senegal. What was the environment like out there?
It was a little rough because it's not. I didn't have the things I was used to here in America, the comforts that we had here. My sister actually lives over there. She has a foundation that's on land in like the countryside in Senegal, in Bojen. And they live kind of, they live off the land pretty much. And so it was a rough lifestyle, but the people were very embracing of what I was doing over there, which was a little bit surprising because I heard the Senegalese people can be a little, they can be private and proud and, they don't like cameras on, that kind of thing, but they actually embraced it. And I actually, to be honest with you, I got more support on it from people who barely spoke the same language as me there than I did ever on projects here. You know what I'm saying? So it was an eye-opening experience. It was enlightening. And by the time that I left, I was there for about 2 weeks. By the time I left, I didn't want to leave.
I understand. In addition to Project Sunrises, you are an artist and producer. What is the reason that you call your music wolf music?
Wolves are some symbolic creatures. I always admire wolves. They're very loyal. And also it's kind of one of the main reasons is they're the opposite of sheep. We know the symbolism of sheep being an animal that kind of goes with the crowd. So I've always saw myself as someone who, I beat to my own drum. I question many things, and it's one of the reasons I did Sunrises in the East project, because it goes against the grain of the direction that hip hop is headed in.
So, a jack of all trades, of course. You also have a podcast where you and your friends discuss topics sent in by the audience. Can you recall how the idea for your podcast, the Underground Railroad podcast, came about?
I think we're all sitting in a room, and we have these conversations all the time. You know what I mean? Like, pretty much the staple of everything I do, my whole brand, is questioning things that don't get questioned. And just digging a little bit deeper than what we see on the surface. So we had these conversations all the time, and we just said, you know what, maybe we should record these conversations for people to hear. Why don't we do a podcast? So, that's how the podcast came about, called the Underground Railroad, because again, like with the theme of everything I do, I consider it kind of underground, and I take pride in being underground. Like, I never even wanted to get a record deal on a mainstream level because, like the Sunrises in the East talks about, there's a certain level of corruption that comes along with that. So I wanted to keep my conversations underground and real, like realer than most of the stuff you're going to hear, conversations you're going to hear on the public scale.
Now, of course, we're going to ask you to share some information with us later before we close on out today. But can you tell us some of the topics that you touch on in some of your albums?
Really the objective of my music, I was actually a little bit more militant when I was younger, believe it or not, when I was like 13, 14 years old. You know what I'm saying? I come from a Black Muslim background. That was my thought process. And I've always been on the path of challenging the wave that the music industry is on a mainstream scale. Even back then, 30 years or so ago, it was headed in that direction. I saw it even as a young teen. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of my content still involves an element of that, but really I just want to focus on creating real music, stuff that people can relate to, real topics, not talking about all the money I have and telling people to spend their money and give it right back to the people who put us here to begin with, stuff that people can relate to. I think hip hop has gotten away from that. And people support it, not knowing they're supporting something. It's something it's a life they may never live, a life they have never lived. So I just want people to be able to relate to the music I create, whether it's love, whether it's lifestyle, whether it's and then I do have topics where I address some of these issues I'm talking about specifically.
Right. Now, a little earlier, I asked you about filming in Senegal, and you let us know how you were received there. Prior to filming in Senegal, did you have an idea that you wouldn't be well received over there?
I kind of felt like there's a separation between like Black Africans and Black Americans. So I didn't know really what to expect. I did hear that they often call Black Americans white, and it's more to do with the culture than even the complexion. You know what I'm saying? It's the culture, the Western lifestyle. So they'll call us white. Really? So I was expecting that type of, to get that type of energy from the African people. But so aside from that, I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't think that they would embrace me the way they did. I did get a little pushback here and there. Like, it wasn't all easy. I did get some pushback here and there, but for the most part, I was surprised and pleased with it. Like, if it wasn't for the people over there, I wouldn't have been able to get as much done as I got done, to be honest with you. Like, they became my team, the people when I went over there, just the strangers I met along the way.
Okay. Now, in the footage, the shots look great. You can actually see the energy that was of the people and the energy that you and the people shared together. Mm-hmm. How do you think that your connection, the connection that you've made visiting Senegal, will influence your music going forward?
Whenever you get to travel outside of the place that you're used to, it opens up your mind. I encourage everybody to try to do that. And another message I wanted to get across the project, and it's not just about the video, it's about the vlogs too. So one of the messages I wanted to get across the vlogs, which is like a mini documentary series, that we do need to, as Black people from America, go back to the motherland, explore, over there because they do open their arms to us on a lot of levels and want us to come over there and invest in their property and invest in the people. Like I saw a lot of white people, Europeans, Asians going over there, but they go over there oftentimes with motives to exploit. So, they invite us to come over there, but come over with respect for their lifestyle and respect for their land or whatnot. I'm not sure if I answered your question.
That was a perfect answer. That was a perfect answer. And I think that it's very important that we actually touch on the connection between us here in America and Africa.
Yeah, let me point out also, like, I didn't have much when I went there. Like, I had, equipment that was pretty much at the lower end of the scale as far as cost. I didn't have a team really when I went over there. I went over there by myself. My sister wound up coming. Then I had like my niece and my little nephews holding the camera. I had to make way the best, as best I could. So again, like I said, if it wasn't for the people embracing me so much, I wouldn't have been able to get those images and that kind of footage. Like I had like $500 in my pocket. So, I was worried whether I'll even be able to pull it off at all. You know what I mean? But like I said, I set my mind to it, and 4 years later, it took that long to actually put the video together. I came up with something that people seem to enjoy.
Now, do you have anything coming down the pipeline? Any new projects, new music that you're working on?
I'm still working on the vlog series associated with the video, and like I said, that's very important. So I hope people invest in taking time to look at the vlog series. There's a lot of messages that come out in the vlog that you might not see in the 5-minute video. And seeing the behind the scenes and how it's put together, the people who do look at it, like they get wrapped up in the vlogs. So there's that, and then there's also my album. Like, I have 2 small albums that I released previously, just to give people an idea what kind of music I create. But this album is like my the thing I've been working on for so long. I haven't, I'm doing everything myself, so it's like hard to complete all the stuff. I'm a producer. I do my own beats, my own engineering, write all my own stuff. I'm doing a vlog. I'm doing a whole lot of different things. So this stuff is taking a long time. So this album that I'm working on is a big deal for me to complete. It's like pretty much the project of my career. You know what I mean? So I've been through a lot of stuff. Like I worked with a lot of different groups and had a lot of projects almost complete that I had to throw away, stuff like that. So this is a long time coming.
Right. Now, you did mention that you're a producer, you make your own beats. How can someone looking for beats contact you, and how can we support you and your projects?
The easiest way to find me is at my website, www.tajiaqib.com. That's TAJIAQIB. Probably want to put the www before. I had heard complaints from people if they just put tajiaqib.com. They have problems reaching the site. So make sure you put that www there. That's the easiest way to reach me. You can support me on my Patreon, patreon.com/Taji Aqib. Like I said, I'm still working on Somebody's in the East project. Any extra funds that I make go towards all the music I create and really my movement and my revolution.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'm looking forward to seeing more from you and your completed projects.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us today and tuning into NNV News. Please share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, National Network View. This is Rosalind Parks with National Network View News. Good night.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.